Welcome back into the Daily Dose. I'm Jeff Hansen. The show's brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com or GEHB.co. It's also brought to you by CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. We are so close to 3,000 subscribers. You guys are fantastic. You fueled the algorithm, and this train is moving forwards. Less than 100 to go, so please keep subscribing to the channel, like the video, whatever it takes. Appreciate your support so far. Okay. Week 2, fall camp. We're here, and something that we always try to do here at the Daily Dose is to see through the noise, read through the coach speak. Let's take some of the most important quotes from pressers, and let's try to figure out what the coaches are actually saying that they're maybe not saying directly. And we're going to start with Aaron Roderick, who, if you don't watch Aaron Roderick's press conference interviews, he is one of the most thoughtful coaches that I've seen out there. I mean, when he gives answers, he really puts effort into thinking of what the most accurate answer is. There usually isn't a lot of reading between the lines that you have to do with Coach A-Rod because he gives you an actual thoughtful response. So it's tough, but we're going to do it anyways. Here's one thing he said, talking about the offensive line a couple of days ago. He said, that is the biggest question in camp. Who are those 5, 6, 7 guys, 8 guys? I don't know. I think we have 8 guys who have started Power 5 level games. And then we have Waylon Lapuaho, who started every game at Utah State. So we've got a good group. That's a challenge. We're working through that. It's also a long season, so there's probably zero chance that 5 guys are going to play 12 or 13 games with the same 5 guys. So you have to have versatility there, and you have to have options. I think as I read that, yes, they've got to figure out their starting 5. They've got to figure out their chemistry. In fact, Connor Pay talked about that in terms of a playbook, most of the guys in the offensive line room right now, they know the playbook. They've spent a lot of time in the playbook. They know how to execute each block. But what he talked about is playing to the guy next to you, playing with the guy next to you is sometimes a challenge because people have different body sizes. Everybody's technique is a little bit different. So they've got to figure out that chemistry. But I think what A-Rod is really telling us here is that we've got 8 guys and we feel great. We're not concerned about the offensive line at all. And so they're taking this first couple of weeks of camp and plugging and trying some different things. Connor Pay, he was asked, do you know what position you're going to be starting? And do you know what position you're going to be playing? Assuming he's going to be in the starting lineup. His answer was quick. It was succinct. It was one word. Nope. And he moved on to the next question. He does not know if he's playing guard or if he's playing center. Could he be lying and giving us some coach speak? Yeah, I guess he could. But we've seen him take reps at guard. We've seen him take reps at center. I don't think Connor Pay knows what position he's going to play. And I think that there's a bunch of guys, aside from Caleb Etienne and Kingsley Suamataia, who don't know what position they're going to play yet. And that's what Daryl Funk and Coach Roderick are doing. That's kind of what I got from A-Rod as he's talking about the offensive line. I'm not concerned. I don't think he's concerned. I think that the concern is figuring out what makes this group go from better to best. And I think that's the concern right now. There is a lot of confidence in the offensive line. Okay, Coach Kelly Poppinga. He talked a little bit about the violence and some of the things that the defense is struggling with right now, or that the defense is doing well right now at this point in fall camp. Here's what he had to say. We've just got to continue down the road of becoming a violent, aggressive, physical football defense that Coach Hill talks about all the time. Violent, aggressive, and physical. What more do I need to say? There's nothing to read between the lines there, but violent, aggressive, and physical. If we are going to read between the lines, I think that becoming violent, aggressive, and physical is the toughest challenge that this current BYU defense has, especially the guys who have been on the roster for a couple of years. They are having to learn how to be aggressive. They are having to learn how to be violent. The plays, the scheme, the execution, that stuff I think is relatively easy for this group to do. I think they can open a playbook, figure out where they're supposed to be. But to become violent, physical, and aggressive, I think they have to forget their DNA of the last few years, and they have to remember how to play football that way. This defense is playing more free. There's playmakers are allowed to go out and make plays. But I think that they're having to learn that. I'm really curious to see how quickly they can do that. I think the scheme, I think the plays, I think they're going to be fine. And if they're not fine, I think that Jay Hill and this coaching staff will adjust their play calling accordingly. But how can this team forget their DNA of being vanilla on your heels and reacting to being violent, physical, and aggressive? I think you could kind of feel it in Coach Poppinga's voice that is the biggest challenge right now about on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, Coach Poppinga, he's talking kickers. Here's what he had to say. There's a bunch of quotes that I'm just going to kind of jam pack into one because he was a little bit scatterbrained as he talked through all of these things, and there were 3 or 4 different questions about it. He was clearly annoyed when he was asked about the kickers, if anybody was standing out or how he feels. He said, "Great." And he was going to leave it at that. Great. One word. He actually interrupted the reporter and just said, "Great. I'm going to leave it at that." But then he didn't leave it at that, and he kept talking. And he said, "I feel very, very good about it. We didn't kick today, but we kicked the last 3 days, and I feel very good. In the last 3 practices, I don't think Will Ferrin, has missed, and I think Matthias Dunn, has only missed 1. I'm very encouraged." He talked a little bit about Will Ferrin because he knows Will. He knows Will from his time at Boise State. Will, percentage-wise in practice, was better than the starting kicker at Boise State, but the starting kicker at Boise State had been around forever, kicked well, one of the better kickers in the country, so Ferrin was his backup. I get a lot of confidence about when Coach Poppinga talks about Will Ferrin. I think he knows him well. I think he's coached him at 2 different schools, and I've seen Will Ferrin kick when he was at Davis High School back in his high school days. I think that's the guy. I know Matthias Dunn is there, but I think that's the guy. I think Will Ferrin is the guy who's going to kick. Now, he did talk that it doesn't matter until you get into the game. Kicking is just so different. Some guys, we've talked about this before on this show, some guys rise to the occasion because of the pressure, and some guys crumble when the pressure gets to them. None of the kicking reps matter in practice until you get to a game. It just doesn't. But it is encouraging to hear that Will Ferrin has not missed in practice. Is that coach speak? Is that a lie? I don't think he'd outright lie. So why would we question that? Let's just buy that and take it at face value. Will Ferrin hasn't missed in practice. Matthias Dunn has only missed once. That feels great. Another quote from Coach Poppinga about coaching philosophy, and I thought this was interesting, and we can talk about this for a minute. He was asked, what does the correction process look like? If you see somebody on the defense make a mistake, how do you correct that? How do you handle that? Here's what he had to say. Coach Hill likes us to wait until we get into the film and then to just really focus on the next play in practice. There are little breaks that we have in practices where we'll correct some things or emphasize something, but typically from play to play, we try hard as coaches. And then he stopped and interrupted himself. I've always kind of been that guy that you see something and you say it right there, but you've got to kind of hold back and write it down, give yourself a reminder. It's a little different from a game. In a game, you've got to be able to adjust from play to play or series to series. Here in practice, we try to wait on most of our corrections until we get to the film room and let the players play in practice. That's interesting to me, and I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not smart enough to be able to really get into the philosophy of that, but that's interesting. Not to correct plays right there, but to really focus on the film room. And if in my uneducated brain, that feels like a really positive step, that the football field is meant for playing football. Go out, don't think, just play. But in the film room, that's when we're going to break everything down. We're going to correct things. We're going to look at whether it's technique or whether it's an execution, an assignment. That's where we're going to get really technical. But when we're on the field, just play football. Don't think, play ball. Go make plays. And I'm anxious to see what that does. You hear Coach Poppinga kind of talk about it, that's an adjustment for him. So does it really matter? I mean, clearly other coaches do it in other ways. There's lots of coaches that like to address things right away in practice. Bronco Mendenhall was that way. So there's not a right or a wrong way. But what does that mean for BYU? I'm anxious. I'm anxious to see clearly an adjustment for this coaching staff. The last thing that I want to talk about, Connor Pay, he was talking about Kedon Slovis. And he was asked if he's comfortable, like how comfortable is Kedon Slovis? And he said, look, he's comfortable. He's in complete control of the offense. And then he was asked, what does that mean? I mean, how comfortable does that make you knowing that Kedon Slovis is in control and that he's confident and that he knows what he's doing and that he's somebody you can really trust at the quarterback position? I loved Connor Pay's answer, so we're just going to read it verbatim. He said, I mean, it's very comfortable having somebody I trust back there. I'm in a little bit of a vulnerable position most of the time, so having somebody I can trust on a personal front is very nice. Thank you, Connor Pay, for keeping it real. Those centers, man, they are in vulnerable positions. They got to trust their quarterback. Now, I did talk a lot about Keaton Slovis in a real sense, that Keaton Slovis does not look like he's been a guy who's brand new into this offense, who's yet to take a game rep in this offense. He's in control. He knows what to do. He knows where the play goes. All of that stuff was good. But thank you, Connor Pay, for bringing a little bit of levity into the interview and showing some personality. And I'm glad that he can trust Keaton Slovis back there, because he is in a vulnerable position most of the time at the center spot. Fall camp continues to roll on. We're getting close. There's been some guys who I think are dinged up. We're going to maybe not hear some injury buzz here in the next couple of weeks. I know of three guys that have been dinged up a little bit, some more serious than others. We'll get into some of that stuff as things get confirmed. But it's fall camp. The pads are on. Everybody's physical now. It was full contact yesterday for the first time. Injury shouldn't be surprising to anybody. That's what happens. You look at the NFL, it happens in the NFL as well. When the pads come on full contact for the first time, guys get dinged up. Nothing to worry about. Nobody's fault. That's football. Thank you so much for tuning into the Daily Dose. Until next time, give them hell.